So thanks very much. Welcome everybody to the May 10th regular council meeting for the city of Courtenay. I just want to thank you for attending this public council meeting. And it's very important that it's a safe and comfortable environment for everyone to be able to hear and see the proceedings. We ask those who are here in person to please mute your phones now or turn them off or put them in airplane mode. Please be respectful of the meeting speakers and do not interrupt the proceedings with applause or comments. We ask that everyone who has a sign to watch the meeting from the back of the room where your sign won't block anybody else's view, or if it's not blocking anybody else's view, you're fine. And if it's on a sign, if your sign is on a stick, please leave the stick outside the building. These meetings are streamed live on YouTube, and the agenda is at courtenay.ca. And we also, for those that are in person here, we have agendas on the table closer to you down there. With that, I'd just like to really start by respectfully acknowledging that the land on which we're gathering is the unceded territory of the Comox First Nation, the traditional keepers of this land. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Councillor Warren.
Great, thank you, Mayor. I'd just like to acknowledge that May 17th is International Day Against Homophobia and Transphobia Day, and recognizes the right of individuals to live with dignity, respect, and peace, and supports the goal of International Day Against Homophobia, Transphobia, and Biphobia to increase understanding and visibility for the 2S LGBTQ+ community, while acknowledging that the elimination of all forms of oppression is an ongoing process towards a society that values and celebrates unique identities and contributions. We are committed to the belief that equal opportunity and treatment should exist for all people. And I'm just going to add one piece that we did, in fact, this council last year adopt a resolution around anti-hate policy. So I just wanted to add that in there, that our council takes it very seriously. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Morin. And I'm just going to announce that May is GBS and CIDP Awareness Month, highlighting rare and potentially catastrophic peripheral nerve disorders, the Guillain-Barré syndrome, and the chronic inflammatory demyelinating polyneuropathy can cause a rapid onset of weakness and paralysis, even leading to complete paralysis. The cause is unknown, and anyone can develop them. Early diagnosis, treatment, and rehabilitation can improve the chances of avoiding long-term disability. Councillor Cole-Hamilton.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to announce that May is Huntington's Disease Awareness Month, recognizing it is a genetic brain disorder with physical, mental, and emotional symptoms. In Canada, 1 in 7,000 people have Huntington's disease, and each child of a parent with Huntington's disease has a 50% chance of inheriting the gene mutation with no cure available. Organizations worldwide are raising awareness, offering support services, and funding research to provide hope for those impacted by Huntington's disease.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cole-Hamilton. And Councillor Hillian.
Thank you, Mayor. May is Lyme Disease Awareness Month to raise awareness about this fast-growing infection that is transmitted through tick bites. I believe that's wood ticks and not tick-tock. It's now present in every province and state in North America, and it is preventable by avoiding tick bites and removing attached ticks early. Good advice if you're going out in the tall grass in the woods. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Hillian and Councillor Jolicoeur.
And thank you, Mayor. May is also Mental Health Month. Mental Health Awareness Month is a month to raise awareness around the importance of our individual, familiar, and collective mental health. Mental Health Awareness Month takes place across Canada in May every year. During this month, Canadians can learn about mental illness and how they affect people's lives in different ways. In a time where so many people are experiencing precarious, periodic, chronic, and incidental challenges with mental health, now is the time to shine the light on how mental health impacts every aspect of our lives. This month is a chance for open and positive dialogue about how mental illness impacts people. Speaking about mental health, sharing, learning, and leaning into getting curious helps to understand, lessen fears surrounding mental health, and reduce stigma. Dialogue also makes the public more aware that people with mental illness can live full lives. And when people have the supports they need, they can be fully involved in work, family life, and their communities. This year, the CMHA, Canadian Mental Health Association theme for Mental Health Month is #MyStory, which is to encourage the idea of sharing your story about mental health, the good, the bad, and the ugly. The idea is that within our stories is the mental health care that we all need. Storytelling is a fundamental part of being human, and stories help build connections and strong communities. It breaks down isolation and separateness. Storytelling in all its forms supports mental health and reduces stigma. And you can listen to some stories online through the #MyStory. And I wanted to add personally, like so many others, I've really felt the weight of the intersecting crisis of COVID-19, climate change, the affordability crisis, toxic drug, and an overall sense that things are increasingly not okay. Many of you have shared your stories with us about your own mental health and how it's been impacted by these challenges, and how others' struggles with mental health impact you, your families, and businesses. I want to say thank you for sharing your stories with me and with council. And it's through these stories that we can better support and foster a community in which everyone has a sense of belonging, is connected, and has mental health care whenever and whatever form that is for you and your loved ones. Whether you are a loved one of someone who struggles with chronic mental illness, you yourself struggle, you've had a bad day, a week, a month, a year, no matter the diagnosis, appearance, background, and ability, you are enough. That if all you did today was wake up, that's more than enough. No matter what, you are inherently worth more than enough life, love, and healing. Showing up just as you are for yourself and the people around you is more than enough. And so with that, know that you're not alone, that as citizen and as a family in Courtenay, we will continue to advocate and prioritize creating a community where all feel included, supported, and cared for. Of course, there's lots of resources today around mental health. If you want to support your mental health journey, you can access free mental health programs and phone support at bouncebackbc.ca. And if you require or need some professional support, we have Island Health Mental Health and Substance Use Services, and those can be found on islandhealth.ca. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Chibouque, and Councillor McCollum.
Yes, I'd also like to highlight that May is MS Awareness Month to raise awareness about multiple sclerosis, chronic and disabling neurological disease affecting many Canadians with no known cure. Throughout the month of May, various events, initiatives, and educational programs are organized to raise awareness about this chronic neurological condition and the challenges faced by individuals living with MS. These efforts aim to foster empathy, support research, and promote more inclusive and accessible society for people affected by MS.
Thanks, Councillor McCollum, and Councillor Moore.
Great, thank you, Mayor. I really appreciate the recognition of MS Awareness Month, as my sister actually died from complications of that over the years at a fairly young age. On a more uplifting note, I opened my computer this morning to all these beautiful photos of rhododendrons from my garden, and then lo and behold, I get tasked with the delight of announcing that May is Rhododendron Month. The City of Courtenay recognizes the beauty and value that rhododendrons add to the city, including the Comox Valley Rhododendron Garden Partnership and the official plant, the Courtenay Lady Rhododendron.
Thanks, Councillor Moore, and thanks for all the councillors. We had quite a few announcements this morning, more than normal, so I really appreciate that. Don't see any late items at this point, so we'll move right into our regular council minutes from April 26th. Excellent, thanks for that. And are there any errors or omissions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? That passes unanimously. And I'm just gonna, one second, Councillor McCollum, I'm just gonna turn your mic off there. All right, moving to staff reports, financial services, we have the 2022 audited financial statements. If someone would like to move that, or do we want to hear it first? Sure. We'll pass it right on to Mr. Garbutt, our city manager.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Renata Vajka from our financial services area is going to introduce this report, and we also have a presentation from our favorite auditors, Corey, who he and I have been in many meetings over a 20-year period. So I'm feeling quite old today.
Thank you through the CEO to Mayor and Council. So Corey Vanderhorst is here to present our 2022 audited financial statements as well as audit findings. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have after Corey's presentation. Before I turn it over to Corey, I would really like to acknowledge our finance staff. We're experiencing some staffing shortages, but we still managed to produce these financial statements on time. And I would really like to thank Krista McClintock, our new manager of finance, as well as Robin Tate, our accounting technician, who assisted me in drafting these statements. And with that, I will turn it over to Corey. Thank you.
Thanks, you, Renata, and thank you to Council for inviting me here today to speak to you. As mentioned, I have a brief presentation to go through, but I do want to start with a big thank you to Renata and Adam and Jeff and the rest of the team at the city for getting ready for the audit. As Renata mentioned, the staffing crunches in the accounting world are very real, and to being able to sit here in front of you on time is a testament to the hard work that your finance team is doing. Oh, do I have controls for the slide? No, Renata, can you go forward one more? There we go. Thank you. So I will talk a little bit about the 2022 financial statements, and then a little bit about the audit process, and then I'll wrap up with some financial analysis in the last couple slides. So a reminder that when you're looking at the financial statements for 2022, we're looking at them on a consolidated basis. So throughout the year, you're going to be getting reports from your staff and the finance department. You might be talking about general or capital or specific funds and projects. We're bringing everything together, all the general funds, water and sewer, reserve funds, and the gaming fund, and presenting everything on a consolidated basis when we look at these numbers. So starting with the statement of financial position, or the balance sheet, at the end of 2022, the city had cash and investments of $73.3 million, very consistent with the prior year. When you add in the receivables, you get a total financial asset balance of $79 million. Debt being paid down on schedule of $11.88 million at the end of the year. And when you add in the payables, current payables, and other long-term liabilities, you get a total liability balance of 45.6. So subtracting that from the $79 million of financial assets, you get what we call the net financial asset position of $33.4 million, which has improved $2 million from the prior year. Physical assets, infrastructure, and other capital assets being managed by the city have increased to $181.8 million. And the accumulated surplus at the end of the year is up $10 million to $216 million. I'll get into the details on that number on a future slide. Looking next at the statement of operations, you see total revenues for the year were $68.7 million, very consistent with the prior year's $68.3. Above budget due to some contributions received during the year that aren't always envisioned when you're putting together your original budget. Total expenses of $58.5 million, an increase of over $6 million from the prior year, but still under the budgeted amount of $62.5. And on an accounting basis, a $10.2 million annual surplus. To unwind all the accounting adjustments, we'll look at the statement of cash flows next. So here you can see operations, regular operations at the city brought in net cash inflows of $11.4 million. There's over $10 million spent on capital, consistent with the prior year's capital spending. $828,000 transferred into the investments to make sure you're earning a good rate of return on any of those funds that aren't needed immediately, and repayment of debt of $1,064,000. So at the end of the year, net cash outflows of $1,386,000. I promised I would get into the accumulated surplus balance of $1 million. The top line invested in tangible capital assets, that's the value of the physical assets, the roads, water, sewer, and infrastructure, minus the debt. So that's not a cash balance. Your reserves of just under $21 million at the end of the year. Capital fund has a small surplus of $864,000. Operating fund has a $22.5 million balance, and the gaming fund has $1.9 million at the end of the year. So you add those all up and you get the $216 million of accumulated surplus. So we'll switch gears now and then talk about the audit and the audit results. We're happy to be providing an unqualified audit opinion. So that is a clean audit opinion. We are satisfied that the financial statements that you have in front of you today are prepared in all material respects in accordance with the appropriate accounting standards for local government. We're ready to sign the report. The last step is council approval here this afternoon. When we perform our audits, we look at the controls in place to ensure you're getting accurate financial reporting. We sample transactions throughout the year, and we don't look at every transaction. I'll take another chance to thank staff for their hard work on getting ready and going through the audit process with us. It goes very smoothly. Independence, I do have to confirm that MMP as a firm and myself as the audit partner didn't do any other projects or other work with the city that would impair my ability to give you an independent audit opinion from the start of the year, January 1st, 2022 through to today, May 10th. And I'll wrap up by looking at a couple slides. Instead of looking at 2022 in isolation, we'll look at the last 4 or 5 years and some trends that we can see in your financial statements. We start by looking at sustainability, comparing your financial assets, your cash and your receivables to the liabilities that the city will be paying out. Here, a ratio greater than 1 means you have some financial resources and reserves available to fund future operations or projects. If this ratio dips below 1, you're generating revenues or tax revenue or user fees or other sources of funding to pay for the past. So the good news for the city here is that this balance has been steadily climbing. If you look at 2018, 5 years ago, it was 1.48. It's now up to 1.73, representing some cash reserves available for future projects and future infrastructure needs. The next slide talks about the capital assets. And here we have a rough aging of the capital assets. We're not looking at condition assessments or timelines for replacement, just how old on a financial basis are the assets. So we compare the depreciated value to the original historic cost. And for the city, this has been returning a ratio of 61.3%, and it's been pretty steady for the last few years. As you can see, it was just over $10 million of capital spending throughout the year is keeping pace with the depreciation and the usage charges that are being applied in the financial statement. So this ratio is holding steady. I will pause there and thank you for taking the time to listen to my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions from council.
Excellent. Thanks very much, Corey. And I just really want to thank you and the staff for the work you've done. This is the 8th time I think I've heard you say this, so maybe not as many years as our city manager, Jeff Garbett, but I always find a nugget every time you do this presentation. There's always a tweak, and I really like that comparative analysis showing how that sustainability of the things that we're doing is actually increasing, and I think that really reflects the hard work that was done over the last 4 years. So I really appreciate that. You have generated a couple of questions. I'm going to start with Councillor McCollum.
Thanks, Mayor, and thanks for the presentation, Corey. It's great to see that we've had another clean audit and things are looking good in terms of the city's finances. I have a couple questions, but they may actually be for staff and not you, so I'll leave it up to you guys for who needs to respond. Pleasantly surprised to see a $10.2 million unspent surplus. It looks like the budget was originally forecast to actually spend some of our unspent surplus. So it looks to be a difference of $11.4 million from what we budgeted. And so I'm just wondering if staff want to speak to where this surplus is mostly attributed to, and what we can expect in future, given that it was quite a bit different than what we expected.
Thank you, Councillor McCollum, for the question. So if basically looking at the sale of services, our water revenues were about $761,000 more than what we budgeted. Part of that was very cold winter of 2021-22, which caused some pipes to burst, causing emergency water leaks, which forced higher bills. So then we got the revenues, but we also fixed some water leaks at the same time. There were also some additional sewer revenues that we had. What also helped was some grants that we received that we may not have, when we were budgeting, we may not have anticipating receiving in funding some of our capital projects. So for example, 17th Street Bike Lane grant, the $70,000 Cozy Corner Playground grant, additional gaming funds. We only, I believe, budgeted for about $150,000 in gaming. We weren't sure how quickly the casino revenues are gonna return to normal, but the actual gaming funds that we received was $1.17 million. We also received additional revenues from FortisBC, again, because of that cold winter. The price of gas was higher and their revenues were higher, so therefore our portion of the revenues were higher as well. And obviously interest rates were higher. So we received higher interest on the delinquent and arrears taxes that we're owing, but also we earned higher interest on our investments because the interest rates have increased. So I think that's the grants, again, Strengthening Communities grant, which again is kind of rolled up into revenues. MRDT funds were higher probably than what we anticipated. I think that's about covers it.
Thanks for that explanation. Yeah, we don't usually get to cast back in our other processes when we look into the budget. So it is helpful to kind of know where the extra money comes from when we get the audited financial statements. And then the other question I had was around our investment portfolio. We adopted a new investment policy probably about 6 months ago. And I'm not sure if that policy would have been in effect when we made our investments that are related to this financial statement, but just curious to hear from staff if there have been changes in the way that we're doing any of our investment decisions based on that policy that we adopted at the end of last term.
All right.
Okay, go ahead, Adam, sorry.
No, you can't see, but Adam is ready to rock.
I can answer that one. Results from those changes in the policy are not reflected yet. We're still working through making the movements of moving funds to different places. So when we adopted that policy, there was a plan to report back to council, and you'll see that probably late 2023.
Great, thank you. And thanks, Renata.
Thanks, Councillor McCollum, for the great questions, and I think that's one of the interesting things. Like the revenues on many things like gaming, the casino has been much higher, I think, than had been anticipated. Councillor Cole Hamilton, sorry.
Thanks, Mayor, and thanks, Corey. Good to see you again this evening after seeing you last night. I wanted to focus on the sustainability metric that the mayor was referencing, and that's a good news story. Certainly, that from 2018 when it was 1.48 to 2022 at 1.73, it's grown by almost 20%. And I certainly understand that a figure higher than 1 is important. It shows that we've got more than enough to cover our liabilities. I'm just wondering, is there an upper bound to that? Do we want to just continue to see that rise, or is there a point in which we can say we're good? So just I'm not sure if that would be you or Adam to take that on. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor. I can jump in, and then I'm happy to have Adam if he wants to. And I apologize if this is a repeat. I've had a few council meetings in the last few weeks, and so this question does come up definitely. What's that right number? I mean, there's no magic number for any community. I do talk sort of about straddling 1 and whether you're into a debt position. Most of the communities that I work with on the island are just a little bit over 1 or into about 2.5 range. People don't seem to go too much higher than that. When you think about that, if you're over 2, you're having twice as much financial assets as liabilities. You've definitely got some reserves put aside when you start getting into the 2.5 range. I don't see anybody at the 3 or 4 There's a balancing act of how much you're holding in reserves, what projects are you're actively doing or are coming down the pipeline. And like every project that you look at when you're budgeting, you're going to have some mix of reserves and debts and others, or maybe grants coming into it. So most communities are playing in that 1.5 to 2.5 range. And then the other important piece of that is the long range planning and the asset management piece, and knowing when some of those big costs are coming. And it wouldn't be, you have to manage that the cost to the community from a tax rate perspective and from a debt perspective. So if there's a large project coming up, some communities are accumulating towards it and building reserves to be able to manage their debt level and spread the burden appropriately. Yeah, hopefully that gets into it a little bit, but I'm happy to, if staff wants to weigh in.
I think staff were happy with your answer. So thanks very much. Thanks, Councillor Cole-Hamilton, for the question, and Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mayor. With gratitude to our staff in the finance department and our auditors, I'd like to move that council approve the audited financial statements for the year ended December 31st, 2022.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. I do see that Councillor Frisch, you're up.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. And I'm glad the question about the surplus came up and you explained where it sort of came from. I wonder if you might just outline where it's going to go. And I know that, that might be future year projects. I understand we have an RCMP surplus account and stuff like that. I wonder if you could just give the public an idea of how we'll be using that extra $10 million. Not exactly to the penny, but generally.
I would have to say that's an answer for me because I look more forward than retrospectively at what we've done. In the financial plan, in my report, I talk about how we are still relying on prior year surplus for some capital items and some operations. Going through over the next year, a couple of years, I really want to build and improve our reserve policy so we have clear guidance on what type of things we should spend it on. So currently, if my memory serves me correct, there's 1.4 million of that surplus is funding all general operations. We have to remember that $10 million surplus is spread across our water and sewer funds too. So it's not like we have 10 million just for a certain area, it is shared.
Thank you for that.
All right, thanks for the question. And we have a motion on the floor. I don't see any further questions or comments, so I'll call the question. All those in favor? We'll third it. It's all good. All right, call the question again. All those in favor? Any opposed? That passes unanimously. All right, we're on to the 2022 MRDT Annual Performance Report and Financial Report. Mr. Garbutt.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Mr. Langenberg is going to briefly introduce this, and then we have our colleagues from 4VI. I'll get that right on a go-forward basis, and I'll speak to this report.
Wonderful. Nice to be here once again. So today we have an annual requirement for council to approve the actuals that happened with regards to our MRDT spending. We have Tanya and Callum from 4VI to give you the fun details on what they did last year.
All right.
Perfect. Thanks very much. So my name is Callum Matthews. I'm the Vice President of Sustainability and Strategy at 4VI, formerly Tourism Vancouver Island, and joined here by my colleague Tanya. Next slide, please. I just want to start by acknowledging that we're on the traditional and unceded territory of Comox First Nation, and also acknowledge that our organization, 4VI, is privileged to conduct business on the territories of the Coast Salish, Nechanic, and Kwakwaka'wakw people. I also just want to express a lot of gratitude before I pass things over to Tanya. We were just reflecting that we are, give or take about 2 years into our work and our partnership together. And it's really gratifying and exciting to see how far we've been able to come. And, I think in a lot of ways, the kind of transformation that our organization 4VI went through was in a big part thanks to the work we've been doing in the Comox Valley. So, thank you so much for your faith in us. It really is a huge privilege to be able to serve the community and business community and businesses across the Comox Valley. So I'll pass things over to my colleague Tanya, who is our lead for Experience Comox Valley and is responsible for so much of the amazing progress we've been able to make together. So thank you.
Thank you, Callum. So I'm here to go over some of the highlights from the tourism service last year. So it's 2022 year in review. Next slide. So looking at 2022, it was year one of a 5-year MRDT business plan. We focus on 3 key pillars when we're promoting the Comox Valley as a destination organization. That's outdoor and marine adventures, arts and culture, and culinary experiences. Of course, there's a lot of other activities within our wonderful region, but those are kind of the 3 pillars that distinguish us from other areas. We want to also encourage seasonal and geographic dispersion. So recognizing that summers, for instance, are very busy and we get a lot of visitors here. We want to encourage them to come during those shoulder seasons, so spring, fall, winter, when more capacity is able to handle them. Our target audiences primarily are ages 35 plus as well as families. We look to BC as a primary target audience, such as the Lower Mainland and Southern Vancouver Island, as well as Alberta, because we're so lucky to have the airport here that has direct flights from Comox to Calgary and Edmonton. As far as an Explorer quotient type, which you may or may not be familiar with, but you can Google it. They're a good way of understanding how to market to your audience. So we look to the authentic experiencers and rejuvenators. We also use mixed medias for promotion, so traditional advertising as well as digital. Next slide. 2022, we formed the Comox Valley Tourism Advisory Committee. So this is a committee that's made up of 11 members from various sectors within tourism, as well as a CVRD liaison and 4VI staff representatives. We had 6 meetings in 2022 throughout the year. The goal of the Tourism Advisory Committee, or the TAC, is to advise, review, and recommend our annual marketing and destination plans and budgets. So they're the ones that really guide the work that we do and provide those recommendations for what our tourism businesses need here in the Comox Valley and the city of Courtenay. We work collaboratively and represent the best interests of tourism stakeholders in the Comox Valley. That's really our goal there, is to just come together and move forward in a positive way. Next slide. So looking at our destination marketing activities, I don't want to stand too close to this. One of our traditional medias that we use is print collateral. So things like paid advertisements in magazines. We also have our annual vacation guide that's distributed widely throughout the Comox Valley, as well as Vancouver Island, British Columbia, at visitor centers, on BC ferries, and at airports. We were also in BC's Guide to Arts and Culture, the Discover Vancouver Island magazine, Vancouver Island Visitor Guide, and Canada Travel and Lifestyle magazine. You can sort of see an example there of what a 1-page ad might look like. And if we go to the next slide, here's an example of a 2-page spread that we did. So just to give you an idea of what our branding as Experience Comox Valley looks like. Next slide. Broadcast marketing, kind of another traditional form that we use. In 2022, early in the year, Global News offered Win a Trip to the Comox Valley contest on Global BC, Global Calgary, and Global Edmonton. The Big Food Bucket List from Food Network Canada featured downtown Courtenay restaurant, Atlas Cafe. If any of you guys have seen that episode, it's season 3, episode 7. I see some nodding heads. It's a pretty fun episode. It's such a fun episode. It aired on April 30th, and it's available for streaming. It's a show that's popular in many areas, including actually it was picked up in Germany. So kind of cool to get some exposure over there. We also did a digital campaign surrounding the release of that episode. So things like social media posts, an integration clip, as well as a 15-second Experience Comox Valley commercial that was aired. Later on in the year, so in November, December, we had CTV up here live on location with weatherman Warren Dean. It was actually at Moonlight and Magic on November 18th in downtown Courtenay. There was 5 live spots with interviews from local community members or business owners. And there was also a contest that was entry via text message while it was happening. And you could win gift certificates, $400 worth of gift certificates to spend in downtown Courtenay. Next slide. We also run various promotional campaigns throughout the year. We partner with the different DBC, so Destination BC consortiums such as Ride Island, Ahoy BC, Gulf VI, BC Ale Trail, which we had a sip and stay campaign early on in 2022, as well as worked with WestJet for some inbound flight marketing campaigns in the Alberta market. In the fall, we focused on a tumble into fall campaign and winter was our warm up to winter. And then we just always have digital search ads running. Next slide. Our new consumer website experience, comoxvalley.ca, launched in September 2022. The website was redesigned for optimization for conversion to stakeholder websites, which include free business listings, which we're still working on getting more and more businesses up and listed for free on our website, making sure they're aware that this is an opportunity for them to take advantage of. The website listings themselves look great. They offer lots of opportunity for conversion to the stakeholder websites, as well as using images or other quotes. It also includes a new events calendar feature, which the submitting events for is free as well. It's a free listing on our event calendar as long as it's an event that's open to the public and something that, for instance, visitors would be interested in attending. And we're continuing to update, improve, and build upon this website. The great thing about websites is we can constantly keep them changing, keep them relevant. Next slide. Consumer asset development. This is another key priority that's continuing on, as Callum mentioned. We've done now 2 years in the community, and we started with basically 0 visual assets. So collecting from nothing, we've done lots of photo shoots as well as video shoots. So collecting B-roll video, reels, as well as those images, and print collateral such as blog content and other things like that. We've done a couple of partner videos that are now live, and more videos are coming. Next slide. Social media. So our organic social media, we primarily focus on Facebook and Instagram as our 2 main social media platforms. And we really have turned to that user-generated content. So we want to share content that's out there that, you know, it's visitors and its residents telling the story of Comox Valley and what there is to do here and all the great things, as well as promoting things that our businesses are doing. If there's an event happening, we want to share those details. There's daily posts that happen, and we respond to questions. We want to amplify that stakeholder content, and we are working to continue to build an engaged audience. So Facebook followers and Instagram followers have been increasing. Next slide. So visitor servicing. Next slide. So we have our Vancouver Island Visitor Center, which is located on Small Road in Cumberland. It's right by Highway 19. It's got the big snowbird plane. I'm sure you guys have all driven by it. It's open year round from Tuesdays to Saturdays. And then throughout the summer, when we have extra staff, we also do mobile visitor servicing. So they set up a mobile kiosk in our downtown communities of Comox, Courtenay, and Cumberland. There's also advertising opportunities for our tourism businesses. They can have their brochures and print materials up at the visitor center. We have screens for screen advertising. We also have a consignment gift shop that it's local goods and local artisans and creators that are featured there. And our visitors center team has provided some industry training. So for instance, we trained some of the volunteers at the Comox Valley Airport last year and plan to continue to do more of that kind of thing this year. Next slide. Oh, here's just a look at the visitor center stats to give you an idea of the number of people that come into the visitor center. So these are the number of people who actively are seeking questions about what to do here. So it's not just the people who come in to use the washroom, for instance. And that's one of the reasons why there actually is quite a discrepancy between 2020 and 2021, because 2020, that would have been the count that the previous organization did. And obviously we weren't here, so we don't know exactly how they counted the numbers. Whereas 2022 and 2021 were, like I said, specifically those people that are asking questions, looking for information. Next slide. So a look ahead at this year moving forward. Next slide. So as I mentioned, we're going to continue that asset development. We really want to make sure too that we're focusing on diverse representation of travelers. So that's age, race, ability, LGBTQ, those kind of things, and aligning with sustainable and responsible travel messaging. Sustainable tourism initiatives and planning are another key focus that actually came out of the Tourism Advisory Committee as something to focus on this year. So develop and collect content that celebrates sustainable development goals, stories within this region. We also would like to begin to do some events and experiences support. So supporting the creation and enhancement of new events and experiences within our area, especially those that drive visitation to our communities in those seasonal off-season times a year. Also gaining some more market research. So using visitor intercept experience and consumer satisfaction surveys to get an idea of consumer and our visitor behavior, as well as their motivations for travel and their overall satisfaction experience that they have here when they're in our community. Mobile visitor servicing is going to be expanding this year. One of the things that they're going to be doing too is participating in more events, such as the market days that happen on Wednesdays with the farmers market in downtown Courtenay and other events that happen throughout the summer. So that brings us to, I don't know if should I pause for questions about what happened in 2022? Okay. Anybody have any questions about 2022?
We have a couple of, start with Councillor Joker.
Oh, it is me. Thanks, Mayor. Thanks for the presentation. Really exciting to get, it's my first presentation from 4VI, and so really nice to have a comprehensive oversight of everything that you're doing for our community. I guess a few questions that I had, one was I noticed the three major sectors that you're supporting, and art and culture, and I have here the Comox Valley Arts Central Island Studio Tour Guide map, which I understand you're promoting. I'm curious if you can speak to, and it was kind of throughout your presentation, I didn't necessarily see anything explicit around Indigenous art, culture, or working necessarily with any Indigenous providers, operators, tourism operators in the community. Can you maybe speak to your work with our Indigenous partners?
Yeah, so thank you for the question. We do have one of the spots on our tourism advisory committee is for a Indigenous tourism business. That position is currently vacant, and we are reaching out to see if there's anybody interested in filling that position. We also work with the IHOS Gallery and some of the other galleries that really promote Indigenous art, such as Spirits of the West Coast Gallery and Totem Design House. There was actually a media trip that was just here a week ago, and there was a gentleman from Germany National Radio who came and visited IHOS Gallery and got to speak to some of the staff there, and it was really great to have that interview and that opportunity to get the word out about all the great work that the artists here are doing.
Yeah, the branding process too.
Yeah, sure.
Not me. You can
Also, yeah, when we did our Rebrand as Experience Comox Valley, we worked with the Comox First Nation to get approval on our colors that we use, because they actually do align with the Comox First Nation colors. And we, I don't have any here with me today, but we have some postcards that have a little icon of a totem that was based on Carver's totem that's like goose fit. And we got permission obviously from him and everything. So it's kind of cool that the visitors can get this neat little graphic postcard, and we can say, hey, if you want to go see that totem, it's on Goose Fit, and people can go visit in person.
Yeah. Just one more question. I was really happy to see the focus being more diversity in terms of the demographics that you're looking at, specifically the queer community, the LGBTQ community. I know that this winter, and I know the mayor was up on the mountain that weekend, so he saw, but there was the Pride on the Mountain up Mount Washington. And it was really interesting as someone who participated in the weekend to see people from actually all the way as far east as Ontario come for the weekend, spending their money in our community, traveling, experiencing the mountain, but also, you know, most of them staying down in Courtenay where our hotels are and the restaurants. And so I'm curious if there's been any thought around the types of, because those first two sectors being the recreation and then the arts and culture, how we can explicitly target any new events, because I saw that you're also working to establish and support organizations to bring new events to the community, around any ideas around working to bring some activities specifically for the LGBTQ community.
Yeah, definitely. We, I mean, things like visual assets, we obviously need to, you know, get some models, some LGBTQ models to come and are comfortable with having their pictures taken. But also another great thing that exists is the Rainbow Registered. So we do have some businesses already in the community that have gone through the process to be Rainbow Registered, such as Wayward Distillery. And it's something that we do encourage others, and I'd like to look more into that too, to see how we can better support those kind of things.
Excellent. Thanks for the question. And next we have Councillor Moore.
Great, thank you. A couple questions. First of all, I'm a big fan of the direction that you've been going in with how you've been marketing and branding our community. I see it as a huge step forward compared to in the past for some of the reasons that Councillor Jolicoeur mentioned. My first question was just around the mobile kiosks. I noticed that the numbers had gone down for the visitors, and I'm just wondering if you know what that's attributed to, because I was a big promoter of the mobile kiosks, and I just was curious about that.
Yeah, so as I sort of briefly touched on, in the 2020 numbers that are in there, those were not numbers that were collected by us. That would have been when the Comox Valley Economic Development Society collected the numbers. And like there's a chance that they were just counting anybody that even walked by the booth or came in to use the washroom. Whereas we, like I said, we really want to focus on counting those people that are actually there to gather information and answer questions. So I don't know that it's necessarily that they've gone down. It's just a change in how we count the numbers. So a better way to look at it is it has gone up from 2021 to 2022, and it looks like we're projected for 2023 to be increased as well. So yeah, it's kind of hard to compare it to 2020.
I also recall some weather events like heat in particular having a big impact on our ability to safely staff, and then also people weren't out and engaging at that time as well.
Right. Okay, well, we'll just stay tuned for that aspect, I guess. And I'm sure you're also discovering different locations to put them and changing things up a little bit to make them as effective as possible.
Yeah, definitely. As well as signage too, just to make sure that people know that where we are and that we're here. So, yeah.
Well, I wasn't going to do like product placement like Councillor, or no, you actually mentioned the distillery, but I wanted to talk about whether there's anything. I know that the whole vision is around sustainability and promoting that and kind of branding that as a place to go. I'm planning a little vacation right now, and it's very values based, like the kinds of activities that really fit with your values is super important to many people. Some people just like to get out of town and have some R&R, but others take that really seriously. So I know that Wayward, and I'm sure many others, have a real sustainability focus, and I'm particularly around the bees and promoting the pollinators and really weaving that into their branding. So I'm wondering if you ever do any kind of more heavier promotion around those businesses, because we have many. I mean, I'm mentioning one, but we have many in the community that really walk the talk on those sustainability practices. And certainly people don't have to promote bees in their distillery, but they do. And I think that it really appeals to people who are looking for that experience to have those values out there.
Yeah, that's definitely a key part of our objectives for 2023. So for this year, we want to create, but also share the content that's already out there and already the good work that businesses are doing. And 4VI has Biosphere program. I don't know, Callum, if you want to touch on that in the commitment program here.
Yeah, so I think a big kind of our general focus is to try to celebrate the businesses that are already doing really great work in the sustainability space, and then also create a pathway for those that are kind of newer to that journey.
Mm-hmm.
So at the 4VI level across the region, we have a program that we're able to really promote well here in the Comox Valley. Received a bunch of federal funding to roll this out with our partners actually across the entire province. And it, without getting into all the details, it creates a really thoughtful and supported pathway to help guide businesses to understand the UN Sustainable Development Goals, assess their operations, and find really creative ways to partner, reduce their impact, and maximize the benefits that they bring. And then that feeds beautifully into the content side where we can help to tell and amplify those stories.
Mm-hmm.
And there already are some businesses in the community that are taking advantage of that program, and it's something that we want more to join. So just making sure we're helping get the word out there and encouraging others to take advantage.
And just very quickly, are you able to capture that in any of the feedback that you're getting from visitors in terms of their what they're seeking in terms of that experience?
Yeah, that's a really, really great point, and something that we should include in our visitor intercept surveys that we're developing. And so thank you. Yeah, I'll make sure that that's something that's included.
Mm-hmm. Just to get a sense of that. Okay, thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Moran, and Councillor Cole Hamilton.
Thanks, Mayor, and thanks so much. I feel like we're really in good hands with 4BI. So it's been a great change in the last couple of years. I just had a couple of questions about the about our target audiences, and I thought it was interesting that we have families, which is natural, and then age 35 plus. And I was just curious, is that as to why that particular demographic was chosen? It seems we're kind of an active outdoors lifestyle here, which I think could appeal perhaps to younger people, but I'm sure a lot of data went into your decision. So one question I had was about that and whether that's similar to other island communities. And geographically, everything makes perfect sense, like the Lower Mainland and Alberta, those are places we're connected to by ferries and by flights. I was wondering if we do anything in Washington State, because obviously they're a neighbor and there's a direct car ferry link into Victoria, and it's a sort of very like-minded Cascadian group of people that if we're working in that market as well. So those are my two questions.
Yeah, no worries. So the 35 plus, a couple of reasons, like one, for instance, being that we are looking at that seasonal dispersion, encouraging people to come in the fall and the spring. It's easier for people to travel that maybe don't have kids in school during those times of year. So that's one of the reasons why they might be targeted, is because they're the ones that can easily come during the week in October, for instance.
Would those people younger than 35, people without kids, or?
Yeah, I mean, we're also looking for those with, expendable cash.
Right.
But that's not to say that we don't obviously target, or that our marketing materials that are out there might not appeal to those younger demographics. It's just sort of a general thing. But yeah, in Washington, as I would say, it's sort of our third, so a little lower priority than BC and Alberta. It is also Rightest Destination BC is another one of their markets that they target with their general regional, like Vancouver Island and BC marketing.
And I'm guessing the border closure over the last couple of years has been obviously
Yeah,
a natural
we're
barrier
slowly
to building that back up.
Exactly.
Yeah, it definitely takes time to rebuild that market in Washington State, and it's really expensive to do so. So that's kind of a slow and steady process, working with other partners across the island as well as Destination BC. And then the question on the age thing is interesting as well, because it's one of the reasons we also look at sort of psychographic approaches. So the authentic experiencers and rejuvenators, I think, were the two. So that kind of breaks down the really traditional ways of looking at demographics and looks more at what drives decision making. So we kind of layer the old school, like you make this much money and you're this old, with this more modern psychographic approach, and different platforms make it easier to integrate those target markets into different platforms. So it's kind of a bit of both sort of approach, but a big driving factor is the disposable income to be able to travel to the destination, to be honest.
And that would have an impact on the kind of the age group you're looking at. Okay, great. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Councillor Cole Hamilton, and Mr. Garvey.
Thank you. Through the Mayor and Council, and thanks to our guests, I just wanted to continue to stress that this is Courtney's MRDT, and the tourism marketing, there's so many overlaps here, and some members that are at the Regional District Board will hear a similar presentation. But I just wanted to thank our partners. I mean, they're industry leaders and were of great assistance in our conversion of the MRDT following the closure of CVEDs, and so just want to we always have a combined message, but the hoteliers that host and have agreed to and support the MRDT within our community, we give them great thanks, and they are core participants in the technical advisory committee on the marketing, as well as the overlaps, and we benefit from destination marketing from other MRDTs and other tourism areas. It's very unique that the tourism sector is just so integrated, and it's core to the overall economy in our entire province. And then I would also just like to say that there are discussions related to the tourism marketing function, which we participate at the Regional District Board, and there'll be discussions on that. And sometimes it's a little bit confusing, and we want to be clear with our partners that this report covers the activities funded through the MRDC, but it's excellent to hear, where we're leveraging together and messaging together for the entire region. And I also wanted to thank the team itself for managing that technical advisory committee, engaging with them, finding them, and it's very difficult because these people are out and moving and grooving and making things happen, and they take time to work on behalf of our community. So I wanted to echo their thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Garbutt. And yeah, the feedback I've gotten from the members of that attack have nothing but great things to say. So, it's good to get that positive feedback as well. So, Councillor Jollicoeur.
Yeah, just as a follow-up, Councillor Morin kind of reminded me of a question that I had, and you mentioned the work around sustainability. And I agree with Councillor Morin. I think travelers at this moment in time, given the state of the world, are looking to spend their dollars and their time in places that are aligned with their values. And I'm curious, you may have seen the City of Courtenay's OCP strong focus on climate change, strong focus for this council. Has the 4VI, specifically Experience Comox Valley, but maybe 4VI, considered going down the certification route for biosphere tourism certification? I think when people think about the Comox Valley, they're what you showed, which is we're a green place. There's lots of things to do outside. We have a city council here that's quite committed to fighting climate change. And I'm curious if that's something that you've considered as a technical tactic to increase the marketing value for the Comox Valley.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's actually in our, again, this year's objectives is to become a biosphere committed destination marketing organization under 4VI's biosphere certification. Did I say those words right?
Yeah, and one other thing that I would add, which is where I think there's a lot of leveraged benefits from kind of 4VI kind of being involved here at the local level. We just released, obviously, in a climate emergency, and tourism, to be honest, hasn't really done a good enough job to date of acknowledging the impact that we have on climate. And so, we're taking the best steps we can at this time. So we've just released a first of its kind report that is a audit of all of the emissions resulting from the tourism sector across all of Vancouver Island. It also has a decarbonization plan. That's really the most important part, where we can start to reduce and make a difference. So bringing that work we're doing regionally down to the local level here is a really big priority for me and the work that I do when it comes to working on the Comox Valley file at the organization. And this biosphere program is a really great way for Experience Comox Valley to kind of start changing some of its metrics and trying to innovate in the space.
Yeah, I'll just add, obviously, one of the contributing factors is transportation to and from our community for tourists. And you'll see shortly in the next council meetings our cycling network plan, and we're trying to move that forward, and the regional district is as well, our active transportation. And so hopefully that can be a tool for you and your marketing for active travelers as well.
And one other thing I might add as well, looking at a target market perspective, we're also working on a visitor impact assessment. So trying to understand the carbon emissions resulting from different target markets, primarily from a geographic perspective, so that we can start to have a more layered approach of prioritizing and putting value on who we're attracting, and adding that climate lens at that sort of demand generation level as well, which is very different from what most tourism organizations are working on.
Excellent. Thanks, Councillor Jollicoeur and Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor, and thank you, Tan and Callum. That's impressive work. My marketing 101 doesn't really hold up. I have no idea what you're talking about half the time, but that's good. You guys are up to speed. Do you mind if I ask a couple questions about the financial report, or is that are you guys going to talk about that in a bit? Or well, I'll just ask the question unless you're going to go ahead and talk about it anyways.
Oh, no, you can ask your question.
Okay. Yeah, sure. So I noticed that, online, what is it called? Like Airbnb revenue was considerably higher than we thought it would be, which is great. I guess I'm wondering where that surplus lives. I know when you get to the bottom, there's quite a bit of carry forward and we started out with a bunch of carry forward. And I kind of wonder if you could just explain if that's like cash like investments or if that's assets in other ways.
Yeah, so there's the two different types of MRDT. So there's the general MRDT, which is collected by the hoteliers within the city of Courtenay, and that's what we use towards our marketing efforts and our marketing dollars. And then there's, like you said, the online accommodation platform. So that's from accommodations that have listings on like Airbnb, VRBO, and those kind of things. And that money, as part of the 5-year business plan, is set aside for affordable housing plan projects. So that's within the city of Courtenay. And so that was a part of the carry forward. And as far as like the amount that we estimate, I mean, 2022 was year 1 of this. And so we had no idea how much was going to come. So it's nice to see, I mean, even with our general MRDT, we underestimated the amount as well, which is part of the reason why I'll be talking to it next, the revised budget that we're putting forward for 2023. But I don't know, Callum, if you want to add anything about OAP or.
I might leave it there and.
Yeah, sorry to jump ahead on you.
And Mr. Garbutt wants to just speak to it as well.
Thank you through the mayor. With respect to the utilization for the OAP revenue for affordable housing, between Mr. Langemeyer and Ms. Wade and representatives from 4VI and Lisa Kilpatrick, who's our liaison on this, we're going to be coming back with an approach to develop, I think, probably an integrated strategy to address utilization of these funds and integrating that with the funds that we have access to through amenities, our affordable housing strategy. So if they're being held in reserve at this point, that there is ties related to OAP revenue. It's supposed to be related to tourism supports. And so we just need some time to bring that together. When the new MRDT was converted and taken over by the city, the legislation, I would say, in Calgary is fairly new. There's a few communities that have adopted those things with the assistance of their providers, getting some specialist advice, as well as working with Destination BC and the province. So stay tuned. That we recognize housing is such a huge priority in our area, and we'll be coming back with a proposal and understanding how we're going to utilize that. Again, it requires actually approval of the province, that plan. When the MRDT was rolled over, we weren't just able to bring that together at that point.
Oh yeah, thanks, Mr. Garbutt. And that's what I was kind of wondering about. But also thank you for your conservative budgeting. What looks like we're in good hands, and obviously the work you're doing is amazing. So thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent. And I don't think there's any other questions that I see in front of me. Again, I just want to say thanks so much. And we've been emailing back and forth as well around OAP and all the short-term rental opportunities that might be out there, especially when we start looking at affordable housing and being able to apply so potentially some of those funds towards that, and which I think is obviously a huge strategic priority for the entire region. So really appreciate your willingness to not just present today, but to have open lines of communication. So really look forward to keeping those conversations happening. And I believe we have more questions. So, well, I think there's a recommendation for. Because we haven't done the financial, right? Yeah, because there's the tactical plan. So you got actually 3 tonight, but and I'll maybe pass it over to Adam.
I could see how this could get a little confusing. So we have the one report that says approved last year's 2022. And so I need to have the motion on that report adopted. Then we'll move right into the revised budget. It is the same presentation. They're not doing 2 separate presentations.
Excellent. Any questions or comments on the recommendation? All right, seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous. Okay, feel like I'm it's a little fluid right now. I'll pass it right back to you.
Yeah, so just the next item was in regards to this year's tactical plan budget. As has been pointed out, we had underestimated the amounts of revenue that MRDT would be bringing in for 2022, and that did result in some carry forward. And one of the recommendations that came from the Tourism Advisory Committee was to utilize those dollars now in our current year rather than continue carrying them forward. So if I believe you guys all got a copy of our revised budget amounts, but basically it includes an increased MRDT carry forward spend for this year, as well as an increased estimate for the general MRDT that will be collected in 2023. We also recognize that there's a new hotel in town, so we still feel like it's a conservative estimate, but we want to make sure that we can put those dollars to work and do good things immediately rather than just have them sit in a carry forward fund. So how that sort of looks in the budget is increased spending in an events and experiences support fund, our partnership marketing dollars, our asset development, our travel media relations, and also the development of a contingency fund line item. And the contingency fund would be something it would be a fund that could be utilized if we need to access dollars immediately to respond to something. It could be a crisis, or it could be any other event that's happening, but just to have that ability that the Tourism Advisory Committee can guide us to spend those dollars right away without necessarily having to come and get approval. Yeah. So I don't know if anybody has any specific questions about that.
All right, Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I actually didn't have any questions. It looks like prudent financial planning. I was just willing to move that council approve the 2022 annual report and the municipal district tax tactical plan amendment as prepared by Experience Comox Valley.
Great, been moved and seconded, and we're all on track now. I think we're all caught up, so that's great. Councillor Yulker.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, really happy to support this amendment, and similar to Councillor Frisch, appreciate the conservative budgeting and that you added that there's a new hotel in the community, and that will likely add to the revenue generated by the MRDT in that way. I'm wondering more from an organizational perspective, because I'm just getting to know your organization in a way. From the budget that's listed here, I'm kind of curious how Experience Comox Valley and the staff that worked specifically for Comox Valley, how that plays into 4VI more broadly. If you can speak to synergies, ways in which you leverage the revenues generated in our community to support the activities for our community within the organization as a whole.
Yeah, great question. So the approach that the challenge that we find many communities are working through is that managing, MRDT and the entire tourism portfolio is incredibly challenging for just one person. So the model that we have at 4VI is ensuring that we have a full-time dedicated staff member who can, Tanya in this case, of course, who can really be active with stakeholders and ensure that we have that really strong local connection with someone who is a resident in the community and engaged in a level that the rest of our team isn't, although we do have a few other team members located in the Comox Valley. But then the really great thing is that Tanya is able to tap into a huge range of expertise from the other 15 or 16 team members that we have, whether it's Dino with visitor services area expertise. My passion is really around the strategic planning and sustainability programs. We've got a range of marketing subject matter experts. So it really sort of creates this support network web where it's not just Tanya having to navigate everything from the marketing and strat planning and performance reporting and budgeting. She can tap into the network in our team so that load is really shared, while also keeping the operating costs lower, because often if you start to add all of those staff layers in a dedicated way, you've got no money left at the end of the day. So that's really the sort of model that we've built that I think has been working in a really great balanced way.
Yeah, I think I'm happy to hear that. And I think that really just highlights the value for money that we're receiving by it continuing to engage 4VI, because there's this network of support beyond our dedicated person for the Comox Valley. So thank you for sharing that.
Thanks, Councillor Jolicoeur. And I think especially when we talk about MRDT, just how getting this information is really insightful, but it's also going to help us make those decisions as we look around potentially having short-term rental rules and how that actually might impact the revenues one way or another. But yeah, when we look at this new hotel that we have, 95 units basically is going to, it's an increase of about 20%. And I know the hoteliers are very excited, which is strange that they want more hotels because there's just not enough rooms. And so it's really cool to see, how even though they're somewhat competitive in a way, but they want to see more. So even though this one's not even open, but it's very close, but they're looking forward to the next hotel that might be opening as well. So yeah.
And if I could just comment on that, I think it's actually quite unique, the level of collaboration and support that we see here, whether it's in the MRDT model, the advisory committee, or on an issue like a new accommodation property coming to town. I think often that's met with fear, but here it's been met with a lot of excitement and a genuine willingness for different accommodation partners, sure, to compete, but to also find ways to collaborate because we know that we have, some real supply constraints on the accommodation side. So, it's really great news to have that property opening up. And I meant to at the very start acknowledge the advisory committee as a group of volunteers who are all business owners or senior managers. The amount of time and effort they dedicate, in the formal committee meetings and outside is really remarkable. And they wear a regional lens when they're at that table, which again, is often not the norm. So hugely, grateful for the time and expertise they're all lending.
Absolutely. And again, they've been very communicative with me and again, in a very positive way. And even, even though they're not in Courtenay, getting lots of people contacting me about the Kingfisher, which just won very prestigious award. I don't know the exact award. It was like the best in BC or something. And I mean, something like that. And again, everybody is celebrating and it's just really good to see that kind of thing. So all right, this has been a long conversation, but we've got a motion on the floor. All those in favor? Any opposed? And that passes unanimously. And that brings us to our annual development cost charges report, DCC. I'll just pass it over to, sorry, Doug, did you want to move the motion?
Thanks, Mayor. I'll move that council approve the City of Courtenay Annual Development Cost Charges DCC Reserve Fund Report for the year ended December 31st, 2022.
Thanks, Councillor Helene. Sorry for saying. Oh, sorry, Councillor Moore. I shouldn't have called you by your first name. My apologies, and I'll pass it over to Mr. Garrett.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The staff report provides an overview of the reserve fund. Staff are here for questions. We don't have a presentation planned.
All right, so there you go. So are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? And that passes unanimously. And we're into the 2023 Emergency Operations Centers and Training Grant application. And again, I'm not sure if we want to move that. Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mayor. I'll move that based on the May 10th, 2023 staff report, Emergency Operations Centers and Training Grant application, council approves option 1 and authorizes an application made to the Union of BC Municipalities Community Emergency Preparedness Fund for $30,000 to be used in 2023-24 to support the regional application by the Comox Valley Regional District. And further, that as a joint applicant, council agrees that the primary applicant will apply for, receive, and manage the grant funding on their behalf if successful in grant funding.
Thanks for that. It's been moved and seconded. And Mr. Garrett.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Chief McDonald is going to give a short overview of this application.
Thank you very much through the CAO to council and excuse me. The purpose of this report is to inform council of the UBCM Community Emergency Preparedness Fund grant program and seek council authorization for staff to make application for the Emergency Operations Centers and Training Grant in the amount of $30,000. As this is a regional initiative, councils for Comox First Nation, Town of Comox, and the Village of Cumberland either have or are in the process of supporting their staff's requests to apply for this funding. This regional approach could result in a maximum of $150,000 in funding, which be used to provide awareness and develop an equitable delivery of emergency management in the Comox Valley that will benefit us all. In particular, the funding would be used to help us understand changes to emergency management legislation that is scheduled for the fall of 2023, to deepen our understanding of the Declaration on Rights of Indigenous Peoples Act as it applies to emergency management, and to promote a valley-wide approach to the advanced planning of prevention, preparedness, response, and recovery of an emergency event. Our plan is to conduct some regional EOC training focused on the finance branch, provide incident command and emergency operations center training, host some evacuation training, and deliver cultural safety and humility training to the emergency operations center staff. And these programs would run in either 2023 or 2024. And with that, I would like to now answer any questions that you may have.
Great, thanks so much for that. Councillor Schulke.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, just a question of clarification on that last cultural safety activity. Can you maybe share which staff are included in the EOC, and was there a reason why emergency services beyond the emergency center staff weren't included in that training opportunity?
Colors mess me up every time. So to answer your question, excellent question. Right now, we're looking at it as a regional approach. So for the city of Courtenay, we've been providing staff of all departments the opportunity to participate in the village workshops. Those have been done on the Comox First Nation in the Big House. We did 2 sessions last year, another session this year. This is just a continuation of that, but extending it to all the other working collaboratively within the EOC and taking the regional approach. This training will be offered up to other members of municipalities or local governments so that they will have the education and understanding of the, how to, these cultural sensitivities that we need to be aware of when we're dealing with these situations. Now, in terms of what that is going to look like, will it be a village program or will it be another type of training delivery? We haven't got to that point yet. However, we will be working with Comox First Nations to make sure that they have some input as to what would be appropriate training on this particular topic.
And Mr. Garvey.
Thank you, through the Mayor to Councillor Jolicoeur. British Columbia deals with emergencies differently than other provinces, and in other provinces, well, until recently, we were going through a federal authority to co-manage and respond to emergency operations issues. Totally inefficient. When things are happening, we engage directly. And so as a matter of process in British Columbia, working and engaging and developing joint responses, you've seen with the issues in Lytton and other actions and activities and activations that have come across British Columbia. So it's important for us to make sure, particularly when you're responding to emergency situations, that you're prepared. And given the location of IR1, and there is some occupancy that happens in IR2 in terms of the campground, et cetera, we need to be prepared. And when we did our fracture on 5th, I, as the EOC director, the Guardians senior person was a shadow, and we worked all together. So it's really important. And I thank you for acknowledging where we're headed. But with respect to what will happen specifically, not determined, the focus is EOC staff, because those are the staff that will be engaging when we have emergency issues.
All right, thanks for the discussion. I don't see any further questions, so I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That passes unanimously. And next we'll go into external reports, RCMP annual performance plan and priorities for 2023-2024. It's been moved and seconded. And are there any questions or comments regarding it? I'll start with Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mayor. So this is the RCMP annual performance plan and priorities, and the correspondence that we have says that this letter acknowledges that the stakeholders of the above noted detachment or community and the RCMP have consulted and discussed our progress against last year's priority issues, and then goes on to list the priority issues for this year, which are crime reduction, police community relations and a downtown police presence and community police station, organized crime, drug trafficking, violence in relationships, sexual assault, encampments, and road safety. What I'm curious about is it indicates that we've consulted and discussed our progress against last year's priority issues, and I don't actually recall doing that. Does anyone else? Or is this something that's gone out of the staff level, or is this a missing step that we have in our process here?
Thanks, Councillor Lane. Mr. Garbutt.
Thank you through the mayor to council generally and Councillor Hillian specifically. The sharing of crime statistics is the performance plan outreach and deliverables that has been traditionally done with the city of Courtenay. We have circulated and will be on the next agenda, the quarterly statistics. This is what I can report back to you. I've searched back in our records. We've not had a staff report related to this in the past. Inspector Curvers wasn't able to join us today. The crime statistics the quarterly crime statistics will be on the next report. Inspector Curvers or representatives will be in place at that time, and you may wish to consider this now or defer that until the next meeting.
And I think just further to that, you know, it is something that we acknowledged this year, and so we've been trying to have some regular meetings. Unfortunately, Inspector Curvers has been away and then back, and we've been spending a lot of our times with BIA priorities, but it's certainly something where he's agreed, and I think we've already met with the RCMP once already as a council, and to keep those meetings happening sort of on a monthly basis so that we can kind of articulate some of these things.
Thanks. The only point I would make is that I think our community would like us to have a more fulsome conversation with the police, both to talk about our very real concerns about issues like violence in relationships, but also because downtown safety has become such a significant priority for our community, and you know, we're getting questions from the public about how do our strategic priorities relate to public safety? What are we doing? We're also getting questions about the statistical reports that we get, and a request on some parts for there to be a little more qualitative substance to those than simply numbers. So I don't have a position on whether we deal with this tonight or later, but I certainly want to encourage us to have that more fulsome conversation moving forward. Thanks.
I appreciate that, and usually since I've been on council, especially the last 4 years, but since we've gotten one of these letters every year, and usually what happens is this letter gets modified by staff to reflect what staff hears council saying, and so that's what happened this year. The list that he gave, for instance, had traffic as the #1 priority, and so obviously that didn't reflect where council was. So, Mr. Garbutt. Oh, okay. Councillor Jolicoeur.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, I just really want to support Councillor Hillian. That this was really what popped out for me. I'm actually not comfortable supporting this tonight. Happy to see the list of community priority issues. I think those are all quite reasonable and aligned with the issues that we recognize in the community. The reason why I'm not willing to support this tonight, you know, right here in the letter, it speaks about consultation and discussion, but we're having a discussion amongst ourselves without the key partner here to answer. And I feel it's unfair that we're having some important conversations and we're asking staff to answer on behalf of our partner who's not present tonight. So that's just right out the gate how I feel about this being on the agenda tonight. In support of also what Councillor Hillian said in terms of the expectation of consultation and discussion, I would like to have a broader conversation with the RCMP around what they would expect consultation and discussion to look like with us as a council. as representatives of the community. More broadly, it speaks about discussion of progress made on last year's priority issues. I don't have those priority issues here. I don't know what we're comparing to. And so we're speaking about receiving something where I feel like we don't have all the information. And I recognize that I'm the only counselor here that wouldn't have been a part of that conversation last year. But I feel like that's a missing piece for me. And then, to the mayor's point, I recognize we have had that one meeting and we've been, staff have been working to try to organize another meeting. But I think that given that this is a formal relationship, there is quite a lot of our tax dollars that go towards providing this important service in the community, that it would be worthwhile to formalize this process. I don't know what that would look like. And I know that in speaking with our city manager, I'd be really curious to know what other municipalities are doing to ensure that this is done in a good way. There's obviously very common practices around how to consult municipalities and local governments around service delivery and the evaluation of services on an ongoing basis. And so I would be curious around opportunities for us to formalize that, whether that be through a public council meeting or whether that be through meetings between council and the detachment head. And so wondering if staff can speak to the formalization of a consultation process so that we can have a more robust conversation around how things went last year, which would then hopefully actually inform, in addition to things like what we're hearing from community members in our downtown core, and what we see from our statistics that we receive from the RCP that would then feed into the next year's priorities.
Excellent. And I think, to your point of not having been part of a discussion last year, the discussion last year is exactly as it was this year, like the last 8 years I've been on here. Really, if there's been things that have been missing, and actually one of the things that's on here that wasn't on here 8 years ago was the violence with intimate partners wasn't on the list when I first got on council. So that was something that in a meeting just like this, we said that's something that we want to have on there. It was added. So not that should give any comfort, but that's how we traditionally had sort of dealt with it. But yeah, going forward, absolutely. Mr. Garbutt.
Thank you through the mayor to Councillor Jolicoeur. Completely reasonable request to have ongoing and direct engagement with the RCMP in the preparation of this. Can only advise that was not the case in the past. However, since my time arriving as city manager, there's significant questions, and we have a great relationship with the RCMP in terms of responsiveness and collaboration on a whole variety of issues. But having that dialogue is a gap. And council, during our deliberations on the strategic plan, were clear. And so I'm endeavoring to action that, and we'll establish a go forward on how to do that.
Excellent. Thanks for that. And Councillor McCullough.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, some great comments already. I'll just do my best not to repeat what's already been said, because I certainly concur with what we've received. The list is fine. I think a lot of these things need more discussion. I was surprised to see that our second highest priority is the community police station listed out specifically when we're waiting on a staff report and haven't made a decision on that piece. Although, of course, it has come up, and yes, absolutely, like our community relations and downtown presence is something that we've engaged on. But to see it broken out like that, I was a little surprised that that's where this conversation is at, because to me, we haven't really actioned that at this point, but maybe I'm misunderstanding the steps. And then just recognizing that, yeah, these are community priorities, but policing really is a reactive service. And sometimes what we're laying out, just we're not always aware of what the police are dealing with, and that's fair. And then the other comment I wanted to make was around number 7. It's called traffic road safety. To me, and I'm sure that this is probably maybe terminology within their own organization, but to me, road safety is for all people, and traffic, I assume, is maybe related to strictly speeding, but there's a lot of things that need to be addressed by the police when it comes to road safety, and it's not simply traffic speeds. We're getting a new law in place. It sounds like it's going to come this year about safe passing. I've seen aggressive behavior many times downtown by vehicles around pedestrian safety and risking risky behavior or risky driving in terms of vulnerable road users. So to me, it would be nice to see some of that language maybe reflected. And we've had such big challenges that we've been dealing with the RCMP that these types of things often don't even get time to be flushed out or raised because of the other things higher up on this list. So I just wanted to flag that I don't think that traffic dash road safety really encapsulates what we're looking for when it comes to people being able to move around the community in a safe way. And I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Councillor McCollum. And yeah, I mean, it's a pretty limited list. And again, originally, my recollection is that the little dashes weren't there. So it was even more limited. It was just sort of a thing without actually even going into any detail. But I really appreciate your comment about, they're going to respond to the calls that they're getting, regardless of what we tell them the priorities are. But really appreciate the comments. And Councillor Moore.
Great, thank you. Yeah, again, don't want to be repetitive. But I agree. I think it would be better to have this discussion when we actually can talk with our CMP folks. And not to be oppositional, but we did in fact, it was prior to our CAO's time, but we did talk about priorities because I specifically remember us adding priorities and also questioning where that list was prioritized and some things went to the bottom of the list and some things went to the top based on our discussion with Inspector Curvers, or was it before his time? Anyway, it may have been 2 or 3 years ago now, but we did have that conversation at one point, and I don't know, that practice fell away, I guess. Because I agree, I think this list, we need to talk about it and come to sort of an agreement on it. So I don't know if we need a motion to defer it until we meet with the RCMP. There is their quarterly stats.
Yeah, well, what I can maybe respond to your comment. So that's exactly what happened. He would be here in the meeting, which he couldn't be here tonight, but he would just agree with whatever we said were the priorities. So we could, in his absence, we could still modify this list as we see fit and hand it to him, and he'll, you know what I mean?
Yeah, we had a discussion though in the past with him and with our rationale, and it was a two-way discussion.
We can certainly defer this and wait for when he's able, because I believe he's going to be at the next meeting with the stats. So done.
Yeah, I'm going to move to defer it then until he's at the meeting. Thanks.
Okay. Any further comments or questions? Seeing none. All those in favor? Any opposed? Perfect. Excellent. Thanks for the discussion on that. All right, next we have Habitat for Humanity, 1375 Piercy Avenue. And Councillor Cole Hamilton.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I was just going to move the recommendation. Would you like me to read that out? It's
probably we have people in the gallery, so
sure. Okay, so I'll move that council direct staff to work with Habitat for Humanity and return with a report with options to address their requests to waive building permit fees and development cost charges for 1375 Piercy Ave, return security deposit, letter of credit for 1375 Piercy Ave, confirm laneway contribution for 1375 Piercy Ave, and increase permissive tax exemption to 100% for all Habitat for Humanity owned or rented properties in Courtenay. And I'm going to sneeze.
It's been seconded. All right. Thank you very much, Councillor Cole Hamilton, for putting it all on the line for us. I really appreciate it. Councillor McCullum.
Yeah, I'm certainly supportive of looking for ways that the city can help our partners that are looking to address our affordability challenges. And, you know, Habitat has had some great success and is a great organization in our community. I was surprised that there's reference to requesting permit fees and development cost charges waiver with no mention of previous support for this project. But my recollection is that we have supported this project in some way with our affordable housing fund. So I just had a question for staff if the information is handy at this meeting as to what we have already provided to the project.
Thanks so much, Mr. Garbutt.
Perhaps Mr. Langmeyer can speak to the development cost charges.
So I had prepared a few words for the DCC report. So the city does not waive or reduce DCCs. We pay on behalf of these applicants. And this being 1375 PRC, I have that we have approved to spend $99,400 towards the DCCs for this project for the city DCCs.
Okay, and so that's already was decided when this was first looked at, when this project was initially approved. Is that, or is that we would approve 99,000 were we to do what's in the letter?
I don't have the process in my head. What I have in front of me is our affordable housing amenity reserve, and one of the items to be withdrawn is this 99,400.
Okay, but that's already been decided because oh, sorry.
Ms. Garbutt, just wanted
Yeah.
to.
Sorry, my apologies. I didn't realize my mic was live. Go ahead and return. I just wanted to speak generally to fees, et cetera, when you're done, Councilor McCollum.
Okay, yeah, thank you, CAO. Yeah, my recollection is that there was a challenge with this site and that there was a fair amount of frontage improvements required, and that the city provided money from our affordable housing amenity or affordable housing fund in order to reduce the development costs of helping the site get to the standard that's required for the housing. But I don't really have a recollection of how significant that was. And then I guess the point that I wanted to make is that it would be good to have a sense of like what the city is providing per unit with this type of request, and that it's not that we're not just looking at the current request, but also casting back to how we've supported the entire project.
Thank you. Through the mayor to Councilor McCollum, my apologies again for unknowingly talking while my mic was on. Thank you for that. Council has a resolution that's dated to come back to discuss contribution related to offsite improvements. So coming back with should council give us that direction, I think it's entirely appropriate. We can come forward with a report. There are a couple of items that are out there. The determination of waiving and DCCs is something that from a policy perspective, we need to be consistent with, and staff are in the process of preparing an approach to that. We have a strategic plan direction around affordable housing generally. I just want to secondarily say, I know that we've addressed DCCs for the city portion. The issue has been raised at the regional district table. I can advise you that we are reviewing our DCCs. You can establish criteria where DCCs are not charged. So currently, we're not able to waive, we must pay. So these are all aspects that we'd be looking at with council's priorities and our official community plan direction in our DCC review. You received information at the CVRD table that was a somewhat similar commentary. The DCC bylaw establishes what is available. We have made recommendations to address our payable DCCs, and that's the direction the council has given us. And so we look forward to coming back with information about this. We've met directly with Habitat because they also have another property that the city has was related to, known as the Nikon property, that will be crossing these issues as well. Weiche raised these issues related to that. And I think it's really important to have a comprehensive policy approach because we anticipate with provincial dollars, the BC Builds program that's coming out, that we'll be continually asked this. And it's important for us to have a consistent policy approach for council's deliberation.
Thanks for that. Yeah, Councillor McCollum.
Thanks for the subsequent, Mayor. Yeah, I mean, that is all makes perfect sense, and I'm glad to hear that that's where this is going. So with relation to their specific request, when we get this staff report back, are we going to be able to kind of zoom out a bit and look at it in relation to a broader policy that's happening? And if that is the case, then how timely can we expect to respond to their request?
Thank you through the mayor to Councillor McCollum. My colleague, Ms. Wade, has got quite a few things on their list. The DCC review itself is coming back later. What's my term? Late summer, early fall. But it will be relatively timely. We can address, because we have council specific direction to look at this property and we can set the stage. But given that we have specific direction to come back on this property from the previous council, we can do that very quickly.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Thanks so much for the questions. Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? And that passes unanimously. Next, we have the Courtenay Fire Department annual report. Mr. Garbutt.
Thank you. Chief McDonald's going to give an overview. Before he goes, we often give thanks to our volunteer firefighters and the incredible service that they provide to our community at an incredibly reasonable price. But I just wanted to take that opportunity and it was an honor to represent city to their volunteer banquet and the mayor there. We just know that what they give to our community is very difficult to measure. The personal safety and response time is amazing.
Absolutely. And I was actually proud to be able to work side by side today at McHappy Day as well. So, and I shared that with the chief as well. So over to you.
Thank you very much for the kind words and through the CAO to the mayor and council. This is a quick overview of our 2022 activities for the Courtenay Fire Department. So we'll start off with operations. Last year, we responded to 1,202 calls. When you break that down to how much time our volunteers spent on average, they spent an average of 280 hours dealing with emergencies in the community. Our busiest month was September, and for the year, our top 3 responses were fire alarm activations, open burning, and motor vehicle incidents. Next slide, please. As you can see, we've got a 10-year statistics on our responses. You can see in 2013, we were just hovering up just under 700 calls, and we've grown to 12, as I said, 1,202. The last 3 years, so 2020 to 21 and then 21 to 22, we've had a significant increase for a number of reasons. And then so far in 2023, we're 156 calls ahead of the pace for April of 2022. Next slide, please. Calls by month. Last year, you can see that August, September, and October were our busiest months for the year. Most of that was weather related, lots of drought conditions. We had lots of ground cover open burning fires, which generated a number of responses. Things do tend to be a little calmer through January through May, but now that we're getting into the warmer seasons, things are going to pick up for us. Next slide, please. From response type, as I said earlier, you can see that the calls that we were at the most were the alarms activated, the open burning and motor vehicle incidents. And then it carries on down through helping out with BC Ambulance, structure fires, public service calls, so on and so forth. And then the catch-all, which is other, which would be the calls that we go to once or twice a year, and we just pile them all up into the end category there. Next slide, please. From a training perspective, in addition to the 280 hours our volunteers spent fighting fires, they spent another 72 hours training. Topics that they're covering: fire suppression, auto extrication, medical, technical rescue such as ropes and confined space, and then also mental resiliency development. A number of these sessions are conducted at the training center over in East Courtenay, which you all are or went for a tour of. I think it was in November, and you can definitely see the benefit of that facility. Next slide, please. Fire prevention. So our fire inspectors conducted 1,761 fire inspections last year. Our most common infractions were with emergency lighting, exit signs, and fire extinguishers requiring service. So our inspectors would walk in and have a burnout bulb in an exit sign. Emergency lights weren't providing enough illumination for people to exit the building in the event of an emergency, or the fire extinguishers were in a state of disrepair. The really nice thing about 2022 is our public education program returned to pre-pandemic levels. So we were once again able to have fire station tours with the elementary school kids, the daycare children. We were able to go back out into the community and participate with fire extinguisher demonstrations, fire safety talks, so on and so forth. In particular, though, it was really exciting to have the children back in the fire hall for the fire hall tours. Literally, the first group came in, they were preschoolers, and I think at one point, pretty much all of our staff were kind of hanging out there watching the show. So usually one of our fire inspectors does it, and I think all 7 of us got involved with it. So it was really nice to have that feeling of normalcy back into the station. Next slide, please. Deployments, as you know, we sent crews to the Apex Mountain Fire in the month of August. We sent 2 crews, 2 members each. They split a 14-day deployment. We sent them in Courtenay 17, which is the pickup truck that has a skid unit in the back, small water tank and pump. The province really liked that. They found that it was very mobile. It provided the ability to do some things that we don't normally do when we're on deployments. We were able to go in and do some scouting for fire activities. We were able to check on fire suppression equipment that had been set up in remote areas. And then they also participated in the fire smarting of the neighborhoods. By all accounts, the province was very happy with the work that our crews did, and we're ready to go again if needed in 2023. Next slide, please. From a strategic priority standpoint, as we all know, Tower 12 project was completed on time and under budget and was put into service. I want to say it was in December, so right at the end of the year. It's been performing well. The training on it continues. It does provide us with a number of more tools in the toolbox, if you will, than in comparison to the one we replaced. We met our objectives for mental resilience training for the crews and continued to deliver it in 2023. And our 2022 recruit class graduated in August. That resulted in us getting 10 fully trained firefighters. That 5 have since been added to active service, and the other 5 are still serving as coverage for people that are sick or on vacation or whatnot. So overall, great group. Very happy with the program. And if you drive past the fire hall, you still will have a recruiting sign out for the 2023 class. We're starting that process again right now. Next slide, please. And with that, I'll answer any questions you might have.
Excellent. Thanks so much. That has generated a few questions. We'll start with Councillor Jolicoeur.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And I just want to reiterate my appreciation for you, Fire Chief, and all those in the fire department that you work with, and really appreciate this annual report. I think in consideration of our last agenda item, this is really what I look for when I think about evaluating progress of the past year, as a report with statistics and some qualitative data, and really happy to hear some of the stories. A few questions that I have. I note that the second most common response type is open burning. And given the impact of climate change, I mean, right now, I think I saw on the news today, 61 fires in BC right now, and we're May 10th. Quite concerning. That's wildfires. And so I guess I'm curious from your perspective, operationally for municipal fire department, is there any type of new best practice, anything that we're looking at to try to reduce the instances of open burning. I noticed in your report, you speak around fire prevention, and in there's nothing explicitly speaking around education for community members around open burning. And I guess I'm curious, both from your professional perspective, but also from what we're seeing in your industry as a whole, how to potentially reduce this number. It's quite concerning to see how high it is, increasingly so, especially given the risk. We are a smaller community, and so the risk of open burning, I imagine, is pretty high with dry seasons, and if the weather continues the way that it is. And I guess my second question is really related to the mental resiliency, which you've heard me ask questions about before. Really happy to see that there's a regional approach to building some of that capacity. I guess I'm kind of curious, have we seen anything around the impact that that's had on your members and the sustainability of that program more broadly?
See? Don't turn it off. Thank you for the questions.
There's a lot of questions.
As for the open burning, so in the city of Courtenay, it's banned. If somebody has a fire in their backyard, our education is showing up, explaining to them the rules, telling them to put it out. And if the repeat offenders, have more of a punitive discussion with them in terms of finding and things like that. Fortunately, it doesn't happen a lot. That said, the open burning category doesn't just include burning in your backyard. It also includes when we go and somebody's carelessly discarded a cigarette in bark mulch that may be along Cliff Avenue, and we have to go deal with that. It also happens when we deal with campfires that may be occurring throughout the city as well. When we have an opportunity, we try to educate the people on not how unsafe it is, and we do our best to put the fires out, but some people are slower to grasp the concepts than others, and we do the best that we can with it. When you're dealing with the fire protection district, that contract service from the city of Courtenay, so for sake of argument, it starts at Mulligan's Golf Course and goes up towards Nides or the Solom School. People lived here a long time. That's what it originally was called. And then going south from, say, Walmart down past the Kingfisher. Their fire protection district, they have their own bylaw, and their bylaw allows for open burning during a certain period of time. They have provided the fire department the flexibility to suspend permits during periods of extreme weather. And we generally do that mid-May and keep it the ban in effect until say mid-September, October 1st. During those times, if we do get the complaints, more often than not, they're smoke related or environmentally related versus fire hazard, but we'll go out and do our due diligence, make sure that they're fire safe. Try to educate them. If they're not following the rules of the permit, they get told to put it out. In instances where they're doing things that violate environments, they're burning biomedical waste, tires, things like that. And yes, we've come across all of it. We involve the RAP line, and the conservation officer comes down, and then they issue fines on behalf of the province. We actually have a situation right now where a person in the fire protection district, the west side of town, has been a repeat offender of burning their garbage, and we've involved conservation, and they went up there and paid him a visit last week. So that's the educational component. It's generally our duty officer responds to the call. We go, we talk to the individuals, we try to use positive reinforcement, explain the rules to get them to abide. 90% of the people do it. And in the cases with the 10% that don't, we use other tools to try to get compliance.
Just as a quick follow-up, I guess, again, my question, happy to get the context. Do you feel, I guess, given what you've just shared, that it's enough? Are we seeing a change in best practice? I just look at the numbers, it's going up year after year. Seemingly there's repeat offenders, and we have a more risky environment, being the climate change realities that we're living in. Do we see a change in your industry around our approach to dealing with individuals who are moving forward with open burning, given the context of where we're living? And
so the educational component for the people that are burning in their backyard is working. The challenge we have now is with the social issues that we currently have with our unhoused populations and people that are using these fires for warmth, cooking food, or social activities associated with, drinking and things like that. Those are the numbers that really are driving the increase.
Okay.
And it's difficult for us to educate when the supports aren't in place to provide an alternative to those individuals to the burning. So yes, part of it is working very well. Fire smarting is working very well in the communities in terms of getting people to clean up their yards and deal with their yard waste in ways instead of burning, so your curbside pickups and things like that totally have reduced the open burning. However, the urban issues associated with the burning, that is escalating dramatically. And in all honesty, of the over 300 open burning, 170 of them were related to urban type issues, whether, and again, not just going there and everybody sitting around a campfire. You'll have an unattended campfire that, 2 hours later is got half of the bush and behind Superstore going because it's August and it's traveled underground. So that's the part of it where it's not working and it's difficult for the fire department to do because we don't have the supports that they need to be able to deal with the real issue. But the other stuff, it's definitely been manageable and really declining in all honesty.
More reason we need to keep fighting for more housing. Thank you, Chief.
Second question, mental resiliency. So with that, we have noticed it. I can say that the culture in our department and in the Valley departments, we're definitely talking about things more. We're definitely having more diffusings after calls that, historically you would go to, for example, a cardiac arrest and you would come back and it was just a run of the mill call. That's the was. You didn't really talk about it and that was that. But you didn't realize that it was affecting people until after their 10th one. And then the dam bursts, if you will, and we've got a problem. We're definitely trusting our officers and they've been really great about any type of a call like that. They've got their criteria and it starts with talking about it at the truck, normalizing the experience, talking about what you saw, things like that. And then also having the support from the city with the programs and access to the resources should a problem be greater than we can deal with in-house so that they can get those resources to help out. The regional team, it hasn't been used yet, but it's ready to go. And again, that's good luck because we really haven't, or the departments in our area that participate in it haven't had that call yet that's required it to be activated. But it is there. We as chiefs, talk about it at our we meet every 2 months. So we do, it's sometimes brought up through the course of that agenda. We're ready to go if it's there. And again, it's continuing. We're fortunate in our department. We have one of our recruit firefighters is highly trained in this type of discipline. And pretty much every 2 months, she's delivering a 15-minute talk on different topics related to mental health resiliency and providing us with resources and things like that. So very happy with the way it's going, but that said, it can still be better. We're still going to continue to work. We're not going to get complacent.
Excellent. Thanks, Councillor Jolicoeur for the question, and Councillor Moore.
Great, thank you. Well, you've answered a couple of questions that I had. One was around the percentage of the open burning incidents that were related to urban issues and encampments and things like that. The fire alarm activations, I know you'd said in the past that those were primarily the SROs. And I was curious whether those, how many of those are false alarms or are they legitimate kind of risk, or they, how many are, what's the percentage of kind of false alarms or?
So I can't right now give you a percentage overall of the total. However, in reference to the single room occupancy, the one in particular, we went there 120 times in the year. Of the 120 times, 69 of them were what we would deem a false alarm. So that would be something that was activated through smoking, vaping, harvesting copper out of electrical wires inside their suites, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
The remaining ones would have been things that we consider an alarm activation. So the alarm's doing what they were designed to do. So that would be cooking. I mean, I will even admit that I've burned the odd piece of toast in my house and set off my alarm. So if it can happen to me, it can happen to everybody. And the alarm is doing what it's designed to do.
Yeah.
Therefore, we don't call that a false alarm. But, and again, as times have changed, and I've been doing this for a while, very rarely in my, earlier days would a cigarette set off a smoke alarm in a residence. It happened, but not very often. The amount of steam or whatever comes out of your lungs when you're finished taking a drag off of your vape pen, that's quite a bit of steam, and that's what generally sets off those types of alarms. So because the way that people can get their nicotine and what else has changed, it's created some issues with the smoke alarms. The other thing too, I will say about with the SRO was there was a misinterpretation of the code when the building was built, which created that issue. The province was good about remedying it. However, the wheels of the province sometimes move a little slower than we like. We've since got that fixed. And I'm happy to report, I think we've only been there maybe 10 times so far this year. And of the 10, 7 of them have been legit. And the other 3 would be from vaping, but it was in the stairwells this time. And that's, you know, you can't do anything about it. The detector has to be there. Whereas the ones in the suites, we were able to make some alterations.
Right. Well, that's great. That was my next question. Is there any way to mitigate those kind of false alarms? And I guess just to echo what Councillor Jolicoeur said, that if we had housing for everyone, that would significantly reduce your workload, sounds like.
In theory, yes.
Thanks.
Thanks very much, Councillor Moore, for the questions. And Chief McDonald, if somebody would like to move the recommendation for receipt. Excellent. Thanks so much for that. And I just really want to point out the fact, you put out a lot of numbers today, but one of the things that jumped out to me is that on average, each volunteer is basically putting in 1 day's work per week, over 7 hours. And so that's pretty significant for people in our community to be doing that. So just again, huge kudos for the dedication and effort that people are going through. All those in favor? Any opposed? That passed unanimously. We are 1 minute to 6. I'm going to recommend that we take a dinner break. Council reports. Everyone's cool with that? Okay. There we go. Council reports. Councilor Cole Hamilton.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. A lot of important events in the last week, but I just wanted to single in on one, which was the Wache Friendship Center. It was a celebration of the groundbreaking for 40 units of supportive housing for low-income Indigenous seniors. And the project is called Natsamot, which means together as one. And it was just a real pleasure to get together with members of our community, from young children to elders, to celebrate this important project. Keep it brief.
Very brief. Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. My report was a little late getting in, so it'll be on the next agenda, but I'll just highlight that I think all the council was there at the ceremony to honor and call attention to the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls and two-spirited people at Sims Park. And that was, of course, very somber, but also hopeful in calling attention to it and looking for action.
And Councillor Hillian. Oh, I thought you were going to pass.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I did go to the Red Dress event to call out violence against women and girls, and specifically to acknowledge missing and murdered Indigenous women. And I'm wearing a sash tonight, which is from the Métis people. It's the Sashing Our Warriors campaign. To begin a conversation about ending violence, allowing us to heal emotionally, mentally, and spiritually through the power of ceremony. By wearing and sashing another warrior, you commit to honoring, respecting, and protecting the women, girls, and two-spirited LGBTQIA people in your life. And it seemed appropriate to me to wear it tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hillian and Councillor Jolicoeur.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Just 2 updates. The Coalition to End Homelessness had their monthly meeting where we welcomed Comox First Nation Housing Department as a official member agency of the coalition, and they'll now be a voting member of the coalition, which is great news. The coalition leadership also announced the early access to the HSS applications in recognition of the multiple projects ongoing, and also moving towards a new coalition strategic plan, given the new realities of our community. And lastly, we had a presentation from the cooperative group here in the Comox Valley on the updates for their projects. And the second update I have for council is the Substance Use Strategy Committee met. They received the first glimpse of the phase 2 Walk With Me report, which had 11 recommendations, which will be published fairly soon and will be shared with council. Many of those recommendations I think I'm allowed to share, but call for increase in services, which we've all been doing here at the city of Courtenay. And also on May 29th is the launch of the phase 3, the collaborative. So moving from a committee to a collaborative with all the institutional partners at the table to start to move towards implementation of the strategy. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks, Councillor Jolicoeur and Councillor McCollum.
Yeah, I'll be brief tonight. Yeah, I also attended the housing opening as well as the event to recognize the murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls. I won't speak to them as they've already been spoken to. And the other event that I've attended since my last update was an MFA trustees meeting this week in Vancouver. I will spare the details of it because I'm not sure that others find it as interesting, but I did find it to be a very useful meeting, just learning more about how amazing and responsive our organization is, that essentially serves as a type of financial co-op for local government in BC. So just wanted to provide that update.
Excellent. Thanks very much. And Councillor Morin.
Great, thank you. Yes, I also attended a couple of the events that other folks mentioned. And I just wanted to mention one other event. I attended the Celebration of Life for Jim Palmer, and many people know that Jim Palmer was an incredible land and water steward, particularly around the Morrison Creek headwaters. The Celebration of Life was held there. It was just an incredible day of community and beautiful, beautiful location. And we all really felt his presence there. He said he was going to come back as a raven. And just as the speeches were starting, all these ravens started being very vocal. So it was quite interesting. And kind of in conjunction with that Celebration of Life was the announcement that the Morrison Creek headwaters have now been, the 715 acres have been purchased now with the latest donation from the BC Parks Foundation of over $300,000. So this is, I think, a huge good news story in protecting the lamprey that that Jim was so passionate about, as well as all the other flora and fauna and also our protecting our watershed. So that was it was an event that could have been somber, but it had actually quite a positive atmosphere, and I really appreciated going. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Morin. I had a few things happen over the last couple of weeks, starting with the day, McHappy Day, and just really want to give a shout out that our local McDonald's here in the Comox Valley are putting their monies towards the local foundry, which is a great organization that's dedicated to working with youth with mental health and addictions issues, as well as the Ronald McDonald House. There's been quite a lot of meetings, and I want to thank staff as well, and some councillors that have attended some of these meetings, such as Glacier View Lodge and Island Quarter Foundation, et cetera, just really looking at housing and opportunities going into the future. I attended the provincial seasonal emergency preparedness, which kind of ties in right now. There's flooding, which is one big concern, but of course the dovetailing into that, there's already wildfires right now. I think over 170 wildfires this year so far throughout the province, and over 60 of them are of concern. And some of the photos where you actually see stumps that are burnt right down into the ground, and really showing how even though a fire looks like it might be out, it can come back after a period of time. Attended the weekend opening at Maple Pool for their latest CCAN for a resident. That was on Saturday. Attended the Watche with everybody else. Again, just an amazing event coming together. The Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women, Girls and Twin Spirits, again, just a absolutely amazing event. And it was my absolute honor to be invited to come and drum at the end with the drum circle. And probably one of the highlights of being mayor so far. Also, last week we had the DCBIA Safety and Security Resource Meeting, which again, I think a lot of councillors were there. I just want to acknowledge all the business people that came to that and really try to get that word out to even the larger business community that that council is really working towards resolutions, and we'll maybe have some better communication on that coming forward. There's also the day of mourning for killed and injured workers on the job. And again, something that I really want to thank staff for doing a lot to bring awareness to it, and really working hard, as Chief McDonald talked about some of the things even within the fire department tonight. And then Watche also had a disability workshop that was well attended, and was a great workshop as well. I want to thank Councillor Hillian for his comments around the Métis. I'm also wearing the moose hide for the Moose Hide campaign, which is a grassroots movement for Indigenous, non-Indigenous men standing up against violence against women and children, as well as my purple ribbon, which again is for a very similar cause, and was a program that our local transition society had put on as well. With that, I think that is all the reports, and we're going to have a quick break for dinner. Welcome back, everybody. We're going to get back into our meeting and we're going to go on to item 8.1, permissive tax exemptions for non-profit childcare. And I'll pass it over to Councillor Cole Hamilton.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. So I would like to move the following resolution. So whereas quality childcare is a vital part of any community, supporting families, underpinning economic development, and providing a safe and nurturing environment for children. And whereas the 2019 Comox Valley Child Care Action Plan developed by the Comox Valley Regional District in partnership with the City of Courtenay recommended that, quote, all communities consider permissive exemptions for childcare services, something the town of Comox has been doing for decades. Therefore, be it resolved that staff prepare a report for council outlining the options for and impact of providing permissive tax exemptions for community-owned nonprofit childcare organizations.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Do you want to speak to your motion, Councillor Cole Hamilton?
Yeah, just really briefly. I think the whereas is sort of cover it, and I think this table is fairly unified in understanding the importance of quality childcare and affordable childcare. And I think given that we were part of this study, which recommended that all communities consider permissive exemptions, I just would like our staff to just turn their minds to that and see what the implications would be. So thanks.
I do appreciate it. And it was fortuitous last week when we were at Wache, when that's one of the questions they have, and I was able to refer them to the motion that was coming for tonight. So thanks so much, Councillor Cole Hamilton. Councillor Joker.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And yeah, not to reiterate anything that Councillor Cole Hamilton shared, I think, yeah, in agreement into this and really excited to see this come forward. I guess the one thing that I wanted to add in terms of a benefit that I see of a staff report coming back on this is that we're constantly also looking for economic development, and we have a school located in the community in North Island College with a program of early childhood care workers. And I really see this as being something that is of value for potential entrepreneurs or individuals who are looking to start nonprofits to provide childcare in the community, as another reason why they could consider being in Courtenay as a way in which we can support their nonprofit. And so I really think that this is both going to look to support our families with children in the community, but also those who might be considering opening a child care center in the community.
Excellent. Thanks so much in highlighting the value of social enterprises in our community. It's absolutely vital. I don't see any further questions or comments. So all those in favor? Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Next, we have the vacancy tax. I might call on a councillor to Councillor McCollum. Thank you.
Thanks. Happy to move this for you, Mayor. Whereas lack of appropriate and affordable housing has been identified as one of the most urgent issues facing the Comox Valley, and whereas the province has encouraged municipalities to implement a speculation vacancy tax to encourage empty units to be made available to the market. Therefore, be it resolved that council directs staff to coordinate with local government within the Comox Valley and report back to council on the options and implications of a vacancy tax in the city of Courtenay.
Thanks for seconding that. Again, I think it's fairly self-explanatory. This is something that's been done in other municipalities. It's a tool that the province has provided, but there is a process to go through it. And so this will really just get us information to see if that's a path that we want to go. Councillor Joker.
No, okay. Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, happy to support this. I guess one of the things I'm curious from staff, if it's possible in the staff report, whether or not we are able to access information around the role that seasonal residents have on our economy, and specifically recently taking a flight from Calgary to Comox, seeing the amount of retirees who actually own property here are active residents, active volunteers in the community, but they may only live here for 6-7 months of the year. And so I'm wondering, and I know that when we went through our financial plan, that was one of the things I asked our director of finance around for the homeowners grant, and how we're able to actually identify how many people claim primary residency in Courtenay. So I'm wondering if that's something that is possible for us to look at in the staff report.
Excellent. Thanks very much. And Mr. Garbutt.
Thank you, through the mayor to Councilor Jolicoeur. We can analyze that. We can have some information on it, but actually what you're describing, seasonal occupants, is actually some of the focal points of the province when they brought in this tax, because we have vacant units that are not there and people could rent them out in the time that they are not here. And you know, when the vacancy, speculation tax, all those things came back through the province, you know, they were looking for ways and gaining inspiration from other jurisdictions that have done that. So we can certainly look at that. But the matter of seasonal occupants is one of the targets actually for the province in that. If I may, just for clarification too, we reached out to the Cowichan municipalities who asked to be included in this tax. One thing they advised is that they assumed that the electoral areas would be part of this, and they are not, and they're not default part of it. And so what I'm interpreting is that we reach out and talk to local governments, and that includes the CVRD electoral areas in this, because of the issues. I was a little surprised that in the Cowichan that they hadn't done that. But one thing we appreciate as staff is there were no staff reports related to the vacancy tax in the Cowichan. It just came as political direction. So we appreciate the opportunity to report back.
Yeah, and just to follow up on what our city manager just said is this is a conversation I've had with the other local leaders, Mayor Cumberland, Mayor Comox, Regional District Chair, as well as the EAS Chair for the Electoral Services. Electoral area services. And so everybody's aware that this is coming forward and is been asked to be part of that conversation, whether or not it's a unified where everybody does the same thing, or it's harmonized where we all know what's happening, but maybe different people have different strategies, but we're still having that conversation. So Councillor McCollum.
Yes, I just wanted to briefly speak to this and just express my appreciation for you bringing this forward. This is something that's come up a number of times, especially since our last UBCM. And I think there really is an appetite to look at this on a regional level. So how we go about that is, I mean, it's an open question, but I think this is a really good time, especially timing wise within the term, that we've got some time to look at it and implement it in a reasonable timeline with the amount, with what we have left in our term. And I'm hopeful that there's going to be an interest regionally. We also want to look for ways to add revenue to our community in order to address a lot of these challenges that seem to be increasing with every single budget cycle that we do. So just wanted to add that to this discussion. Thanks.
Really appreciate that. And so this motion, once I'd worked through it with staff, I did share this with the other leaders. So everyone's allowed to utilize this motion and massage it as they see fit. And again, yeah, having an extra sort of stream of revenue, but also, you know, hopefully if there are places that could go on the market, so we even have more market rentals. I mean, so really it's kind of win-win either way. So really appreciate those words. That being said, Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I guess I'll hold up judgment until we get as much information as possible, but I am really curious about how big of an issue this is. I'm also sensing that there could be a lot of unintended consequences, so it'd be good to hear about those as well. So thanks for bringing it forward.
Absolutely. Thanks so much. All right, seeing no further questions or comments, all those in favor? Any opposed? That passes unanimously, and we are on to unfinished business. We have the one from the Comox Valley Cycling Coalition and Councillor Frisch.
Thanks, Mayor. I'll move that council direct staff to return with a report with options to address the Comox Valley Cycling Coalition request to consider personnel dedicated to active transportation, improve maintenance of cycling lanes, collaborate with users to resolve difficult areas, and better knowledge and planning of secure bike parking and other end of trip routing or facilities.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Does any questions or comments regarding this? I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Next, we have the North Island College Student Union's menstrual equality, and we have Councillor Moore.
Thanks, Mayor. I'll move that council direct staff to return with report. Is that a typo? A report with on options. Yeah, on options, sorry. Costs and implications of providing free menstrual products in city operated facilities and of joining the Period Promise campaign.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Councillor McCollum.
Yeah, I just wanted to briefly speak in support of this, although I think it is widely supported by our council. I also want to appreciate the North Island, excuse me, I seem to have a frog in my throat tonight, the North Island College Students Union for bringing this forward. I think it is being further recognized that this is a gap in kind of how we provide bathroom facilities out in society. And this is something that's changing. And I appreciate that they've brought this to the city to look at because it's important. And I do think it is a direction that we need to go and address. And additionally, I noticed for the first time while I was in YVR yesterday that they do in fact provide these products now in those bathrooms. And that's, you know, a large facility with a ton of people coming and going. So it's very achievable. And this is just recognizing that it's time to update our practices. Thank you.
Thanks much, Councillor McCollum, for those comments. I don't see any further questions or comments. So all those in favor? Any opposed? That passes unanimously. And then we go into strategic priorities for 2023-2026. And Councillor Hillian.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that council adopt the 2023 to 2026 strategic priorities.
And moved in second. Would you like to speak to them?
Yes, I know that we've had some feedback from the community, fairly limited. I counted 3 messages that came in. I don't know whether staff has any comments in relation to them. But of course, the passing of the priorities certainly leads us to anticipation of what we're actually going to do to implement them. And it was helpful at our last council meeting to hear from Mr. Shaw about the impending report on traffic safety, which I know there's a tremendous amount of interest in the community in a number of neighborhoods into receiving, both in school neighborhoods and otherwise. So I'm certainly looking forward to that. I did forward to staff a message that came in from a citizen that hadn't been copied to staff that had several comments in it, and I'm hoping that staff might be able to look at those in the course of time. Thanks, Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Hillian, for those comments. I don't see any further questions or comments, so I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? And that passes unanimously. And that brings us to our last item, our tax rates bylaw 3097 for 2023. And we have Councillor Will Cole-Hamilton.
Thanks, Mayor. So I'll move the council adopt City of Courtenay tax rates bylaw 3097 2023.
All right. And are there any questions or comments regarding this? All right. Councillor Jolker.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, I'm going to be supporting this tonight, but just wanted to speak to something that I spoke to our city manager and our director of finance about in reviewing the financial plan that was approved at our last council meeting. One of the things that came up for me, and it's highlighted here in the bylaw, is the other taxes that are imposed on property owners in the community and commercial property owners and all the different types of owners in the community. And I think one of the processes that this is my first budget process as an elected official, one of the curious things for me was seeing the amounts of taxation from our other partners, the hospital district, the regional district, the municipal finance authority, the library, the DCBIA for those downtown, and the BC Assessment Authority. You know, given that we had one of the higher tax rates this year for the city of Courtenay, my question to the city manager and to the director of finance was that going through our process, would have been for me really informative to be able to have the other rates set from the other authorities in recognition that they are also going through a budgetary process, and I'm more familiar with following the regional districts process than and the hospital district, not so much the other, the library, the finance authority, or the BC assessment authority. And so I guess really my comment is more, and I'd love to hear from staff, maybe share a little bit around what was shared with me around our process in setting the tax rates, but really just curious around how we can have a holistic view of the resident, of the taxpayer, when we at the city are deciding and deliberating our tax rate in consideration of what others listed here on the schedule page, page 3, are also going to be leveraging off of the taxpayer. So I'm wondering if the staff can maybe speak to the process and ways in which we can potentially have those included in our conversations at the city.
Right, thanks for that. City manager.
Through the mayor, to Councillor Jolicoeur, maybe I'll start, and Mr. Langmeyer has any other thoughts. It's very challenging in a shared taxation around timing. However, we do have communication, and we tend to rely on the 5-year financial plan of other organizations. So we're aware, and we do have representatives around the table that work very hard on the regional district 5-year financial plan. It is a little bit challenging though with the library and the other items there. And we, we recognize there's a shared taxpayer, and I know that our representatives that are at other tables are also cognizant of that. But it is a challenge to sort of project forward other than the 5-year financial plan to integrate that. I think it would be useful, and we try to do that in our own deliberations. And as we move forward, we talked to council about backing up and having more and earlier discussions around taxation, which on one hand gives us significantly more time and a lot more work that we can do, but it does make less certain some of those other taxation authorities. But we do try our best. We're aware of significant capital projects that drive both our utilities that come out of the city. But that I just really it's a great observation that we are in a shared tax base. I don't know if Mr. Langmeyer had any other thoughts in that regard.
Thank you.
Well, and maybe one of the things that, because again, this is sort of an every year kind of thing, and I think one of the things that I think our council tried to do in the last term was try to have an information packet that came out along with the tax notice that tried to articulate kind of where the things came from. And I think there might have even been like a pie chart and those kinds of things to really help articulate kind of where the taxes were going, et cetera. So again, it's not a perfect system, but that might be something that we can, although tax notices they're looming quickly here. So if that's a conversation we want to have or anything, then our time is a bit limited. Councillor Cole Hamilton.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I was actually going to say something similar to you. I think the trick here is, we're mandated to collect taxes for other people. And I think the people in our communities, understandably, have got lots to do. They don't necessarily look at each itemized line. They just see that this came from the city of Courtenay and this is the number at the bottom. And I appreciate hearing that we're obviously using the 5-year plans of the other bodies whose taxes we're collecting to get an idea of probably what they're going to do. But in the end, this is our city, and we have needs, we have things we have to do, and we're probably not going to say put off, McPhee Meadows because we think the library board is going to open a new branch in Massett, which they are, and so they should. But there are just so many variables and so many factors. And in the end, I think we have to sort of look at what we need and run a responsible ship ourselves. And obviously try to do what we can to anticipate what the others will do. And I think the primary thing is just continue to just talk to people, as probably we all did on the doorstep last fall, about what's actually on their tax bill and which parts we can actually influence and which parts we've just been required by the province to collect. So it's a challenging situation, but I think the education piece is probably the most significant to make sure that the city of Courtenay is what we are taxing people is seen in its appropriate context. Thanks.
Thanks so much for those comments, Councillor Cole Hamilton. I might just add quickly, like, if we look at the last, say, 4 years, things that you can't really anticipate, like a pandemic, major sources of revenue, like the casino closing down completely, that pays for our RCMP officers and how that impacts the rest of our budgets. But I think tonight's, serendipitously, we had Corey talk tonight about how we have a very sustainable budget. We have reasonable surpluses, we have reasonable reserves. And those are the types of things that, give us the ability to kind of smooth things out like we've done this year, where we know that there's actually a much higher tax requirement to get the tax base where it needs to be. But we're able to utilize some of those surpluses and reserves to really reduce that shock, for lack of a better term. But yeah, it's a complicated mess, for lack of a better term. But I do see that Councillor Helene had a comment, so maybe I'll pass it over.
Thanks, Mayor. I want to support the comments of Councillor Cole Hamilton. Our responsibility is to assess the needs of the city and deliver a budget that meets those needs that we think that our taxpayers can sustain. I appreciate that the other taxing authorities have an impact, particularly during a time when we're concerned about the means of people in our community. I must say, though, Councillor Jolicoeur, you seem to have an inexhaustible desire for additional information on any number of fronts. And in my experience, we never get all the information that would lead to us making an ironclad decision on things. There are times when we have to rely on the incredibly hard work that staff has done. And in my view, we had a pretty exhaustive process looking at our own budget. More extensive than I've ever been involved in. And I just want to applaud our staff for all the information they did provide us with, particularly the comparisons with other communities, which in my view, we should actually broadcast to the community to counter the Royal LePage propaganda that's come out in today's newspaper or today's advertising pamphlet, more aptly put. Anyway, it's obviously an issue, but what's the alternative? Should we ask all the taxing authorities to send out separate notices? I'm sure our community, even if we had the jurisdiction to do that, wouldn't appreciate getting 7 different notices from various authorities. So we're stuck with it. And I think Councillor Cole Hamilton makes an excellent point that part of our job is to explain to people why it is that way, what services they get, and ultimately they decide whether they're getting value for money or not. And in most cases, I think the answer to that is yes. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Helene. And Councillor Jolicoeur.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Just a question for staff. The schedule 8 and 2, as far as I remember, we are having that at 25% for recreation. And I'm just wondering if under utilities for $1,000 taxable value is 18.97, but then under recreation it's 2.9. And I seem to recall that those rates, the percentages were the same.
So what it sounds like you're talking about is the change from the prior year. So in my financial plan presentation, I talked about how when you look at tax rates, it is near impossible to look at the individual tax rate and see how it translates to your actual payment changing. The desired change in total taxation on a utility property did increase by 25%. It was already higher than the recreation nonprofit class. So therefore, you do not see the same change in the tax rate because you're already starting from a higher initial tax number.
Great, thank you.
Excellent. All right. Well, I think we had a good discussion. If there's no more questions or comments, I'll call the question. All those in favor? And that is unanimous. And we are adjourned. Oh, did you want to? No. You sure? Yeah.
I wanted to say that on the city's website, there is information like that pie graph where our money goes. And there is a property tax estimator. So you can poke around and find the estimator. So you can put in your assessed value from this year and last year, and it'll give you how it changed. Looking at the pie chart, $1 collected in tax, the city retains only 51% of that.
Hmm.
So to put it into perspective, how much we're collecting for other authorities is almost half.
Yeah, I appreciate that articulation. And again, it's been said, but this year's budget process, although lengthy and very detailed, which had its implications, I think really set us up for success. I just really want to appreciate staff's work on that and council as well. And we are now adjourned.